Look now, look all around. There's no sign of life. Voices, another sound. Can you hear me now? This is planet Earth. And that was Duran Duran. Those lyrics are from their first hit single, Planet Earth. And on that song, on that album, was a very prominent and important synthesizer, the Roland JUPITER-4. We'll be talking about its features, and we'll take a listen to it. Stick around, it's coming up. I'm Roland Perez, and this is Alamo Music, San Antonio, Texas. Be sure to check us out online at alamomusic.com, and be sure to subscribe to check out more videos on YouTube. There's a lot more stuff coming up, some really fantastic synthesizers. Today, we're taking a look at the legendary JUPITER-4. This particular keyboard was released from 1978 through 1981. And just a few weeks ago, I did another video on the Prophet 10 from Sequential Circuits. Oddly enough, that keyboard was made from 1978 through 1981. So I think this was kind of like Roland's first endeavor into polyphonic synthesizers. This was their first polysynth. And they had some great competition. They had the Prophet 5, the Prophet 10, the Yamaha CS80, and they also were competing against the Oberheim OBXA. All amazing synthesizers. But the JUPITER-4, to me and many others, kind of fell short by way of the looks and some of the features. It was a lot more limited compared to some of those other synthesizers, and its sonic voice really didn't hold a candle to some of those other synthesizers. Matter of fact, if you look at the front panel here, there's a lot of colored tabs that indicate presets. Well, that's very much like the home organ thing, where, for example, if you look at a Prophet 5 or an OBXA, those don't have the colored tabs with the presets on it. Those were real synthesizers, right? Well, let's not hold anything back. This thing looks a little funky, but it sounds amazing. And sonically, the integrity of it is just as viable and just as important as all of those other synthesizers I just mentioned. I mentioned that Duran Duran used this particular keyboard on that first album, their first album. The JUPITER-4 was a very, very strong synth all over that album. But it wasn't just that band. There was a lot of other bands that utilized it. Even though, once again, it looked a little clunky, it still offered that Roland thing. And where Roland was used to doing monophonic synthesizers previously to this, for example, the Roland SH5, the SH1, the SH2, this was kind of like their attempt at getting into the polysynth market. And I'm so glad they did because, I mean, if you think about it, what came after this? Well, the JUPITER-6, the JUPITER-8, the Juno 106, and the Juno 60. All those keyboards were stemmed and started from the concept of this JUPITER-4. Okay, let's take a look at some of the features on this synthesizer. First off, it's 4-note polyphonic. There are 4 voice cards inside it that need calibration and tuning every now and again. But for the most part, this particular one has been extremely stable for us here at Alamo Music. It's been a very well-behaved synthesizer. So, you get the VCO section, which is really just one oscillator, but there is a sub-oscillator click switch right down here. Of course, you have your pulse sine, sawtooth waveforms. You have a noise generator, which is pretty funky, pretty cool. You do have one LFO generator, but I should say that you also have a way of augmenting this section to act as a secondary LFO. And that can be adjusted, modified real-time with this section right over here called the trigger section. The trigger section can do a couple of different things. It could be a VCF modulation. It could be the rate for the arpeggiator or the rate for this LFO right over here. But again, that's completely secondary to this particular LFO here, which obviously can be assigned to the oscillator or the filter right over here. Very cool little synthesizer with a lot of the features that you would expect from, a Roland synth. The envelope section is really kind of a very cool thing. I think that the envelope is pretty snappy on the attack. A lot of Roland synthesizers in this era, for example, the SH5, which I have personally, That particular envelope on the attack is a little bit sluggish, it's a little bit slow. So doing a really attacky kind of bass line on an SH5 is really not going to happen too well. On this particular keyboard, much like the SH101, the envelope and the attack is really fast and really snappy. I really dig this envelope section. We also have the VCA section, which is kind of like the amplitude as well, the overall volume level, which is pretty typical of any, again, Roland synthesizer. And one of my favorite things about any Roland synthesizer, and I'm sure you'll agree, is the filter section. Wow, it just sounds massive. It's kind of like they took an SH1, an SH5, and an SH101, and they kind of combined the best attributes of those filters, and they're all kind of loaded in this JP4. I should say that high-pass filters, I really don't utilize very much on synthesizers, especially on the Juno 106, but the high-pass filter on the SH5 is by far my favorite. As you move the slider on an SH5, it almost sounds like a flanger or a phaser. It's very musical, and it's just a really rich sounding high-pass filter. Well, the one in this JP4 is really no exception. It does offer that really cool HPF thing going on that is not as wheezy or thin as some of the other HPF filters I've used on other synthesizers. The low-pass filter is where the money's at. This is where all that creamy goodness comes into play on sweeping a filter from low to high, totally open. And, of course, this resonance right over here, once it's cracked all the way up, it will self-oscillate, and it turns into a very mighty scream. Below this, you have the modulation section right over here. You've got your trigger mod, which can do a couple different things. You can assign LFO to it, you can assign filter to it, and of course you can assign pitch to it. If you've played any Roland analog synthesizer from the era or slightly after, it's all going to be mirrored to what you already know. So, what do we have? We have a basic set of tools in the front panel, some basic editing on the panel itself, and a pretty clacky, funky little keybed that still does a job pretty good, I think. All in all, it's just a very powerful synthesizer with limited capabilities. It's just the sonic integrity that it offers that makes it worthwhile. Let's talk about what's at the very front panel here. You do have an ensemble button, which is kind of like their chorus. Although to me it's not as rich as a Juno 60 chorus, it definitely adds that Roland chorusy kind of thing. Just a little light in my book. I should say that the ICs that utilize this ensemble section are really, really hard to get, practically impossible really. So if this particular section goes out, it's just a pain in the neck to try to get it serviced and to source parts for it. Right next to that, we have an arpeggiator section, which is really, really cool. The best thing about this arpeggiator section is that it can take clock from an external device. That's pretty awesome. So if you had a Roland CR78 or an 808 or a 909, you could send that clock right to the arpeggiator and bam, you're synced into that beat. Really cool stuff. Right next to all of that, you have the presets. And I gotta say, I'm not really a preset kind of guy when it concerns synthesizers, but there are some pretty wicked little presets in here. Some that are very usable and very melodical and musical. I should say that once you engage one of the presets, you really lose control over this panel right over here. So if you're thinking, I'm gonna pick this voice preset and tweak the filter on it real time, not gonna happen. That's not the way this keyboard was designed, that's not how it works. But once again, I think the programmers designed these presets pretty well. They're still very musical and they have that retro thing going on, which is neat. There is a manual button right over here. Once you click that button, that's when everything on the top panel is engaged and you lose the preset, of course. So it's kind of like one of the things where it's one or the other. Most of the time I find myself in manual mode, but I'll tell you what, on a couple of songs I have utilized the presets to great effect. I mean, routing one of those through an Eventide effects processor or a Boss tape delay, pretty wicked, pretty awesome. So all of this on the top panel is a little awkward and kind of like home organy looking. That's not a problem, it's okay because it still offers a lot of really cool stuff and cool stuff that's only in this particular keyboard. Once again, the Jupiter-4 was pretty groundbreaking when it first came out, although it took a little while for people to start to realize how lovely it was. It was not a really fast or big seller at first, but again, once bands started picking them up and using them on live gigs, they did get kind of like a cult following, and of course, now they're just simply legendary. Great keyboard. Okay, enough talk about this synthesizer. Let's hear it in action. I really hope you enjoyed checking out this Jupiter-4 with me. It's a great synthesizer and it's just really awesome to have it here at Alamo Music, San Antonio, Texas. Speaking of which, check us out online, alamomusic.com. Hop on our YouTube channel and subscribe. There's a lot more videos coming up, including a Yamaha CS80, the legendary CS80. I'm Roland Perez. Thanks again for checking us out. Catch you later.